I'm Margaret Hayes, 60 years old, and I've lived my whole life in Charleston, South Carolina, a coastal city where whispers travel faster than the tide and nothing stays secret for long. For over 3 decades, I taught literature, a career that filled hearts but never bank accounts. When I retired, I believed I'd finally earned a quiet life surrounded by family, especially my son Ethan and my grandson Lucas. But I was wrong, because the deepest wounds never come from strangers. They come from the people you'd give your life for. That Christmas Eve, with the tree glowing and the table set in holiday perfection, I never expected my own son to stand, cross the room, and raise his hand against me. The crack of that slap silenced everything: the laughter, the clinking glasses, the illusion that we were still a family. But what shocked them most wasn't the strike itself, it was my response. I didn't cry, I didn't plead, I didn't crumble. I smiled. And that smile made Ethan step back, made Richard, my ex-husband, realize that the rules of his game had just shifted forever. Before I tell you what happened after that moment, hit subscribe and let me know where you're listening from, because what came next will show you that sometimes the sharpest weapon a betrayed mother can wield is a single, unshakable smile. Charleston has always been a place where history clings to the air, like Spanish moss on the oak trees. My house sat in the old district, a 2-story Victorian with creaking floors and windows that rattled in the coastal winds. I'd lived there for over 30 years, long enough for neighbors to watch my children grow, long enough for gossip to follow me down the street after the divorce. People thought they knew my life, but the truth was far darker than the picture-perfect porch and holiday wreath suggested. That morning, Christmas Eve, I polished my mother's silver serving tray until my arthritic fingers ached. I told myself the tradition mattered, that keeping the ritual alive would hold the family together. I had hosted Christmas dinners for decades, no matter what storms hit our lives, even after Richard left me for a woman half his age. Even after the divorce, lawyers picked through our assets like vultures. I still set the table each December as if nothing had changed. Maybe part of me clung to the hope that ritual could glue the cracks in a broken family. The phone rang while I was arranging poinsettias on the dining table. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. He was 40 now, tall with his father's square jaw and his grandfather's temper. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice carrying that fake cheerfulness he'd perfected. "Just confirming dinner's still at 6. Natalie's bringing her cranberry casserole." "Of course," I replied, smoothing the tablecloth with my palm. "Dinner's at 6. Everything's ready." He hesitated. "Also, Dad wants to stop by a little early. He says he has paperwork you need to sign. Some formality about the coastal property." My chest tightened. The coastal house, our summer refuge on Folly Beach, was the only place left untouched by bitterness. Richard had fought for it during the divorce, but somehow it ended up still under both our names. He'd called it a tax convenience. I had always known better. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Something about developers, Mom. They need both signatures. It's no big deal." It was always no big deal until it was. Richard had built his entire empire on convincing people not to look too closely. I forced calm into my tone. "Tell him 3 o'clock. I'll be here." After we hung up, I stood in the dining room, staring at the candlelight flickering in the polished silver. My reflection looked older than I felt: gray streaks in my once auburn hair, fine lines around my mouth, a hardness in my eyes I didn't recognize from wedding photos decades earlier. I had given Richard 3 children: Ethan, Claire, and my middle son, Daniel. Daniel had died 12 years earlier in a car crash, and nothing had been the same since. Richard hadn't shed a tear at the funeral. I had never forgiven him for that. At 3 sharp, the doorbell rang. Richard stood on the porch in a tailored coat, his hair still thick and silver, his body lean from vanity workouts. He carried a leather briefcase that reeked of power plays. "Maggie," he said with that polished smile, "you look well. Come in." Richard, I replied, stepping aside. He followed me into the parlor, pulling out an envelope thick with documents. The developers are offering a substantial sum for the Folly Beach property. Condos, golf course, resort complex, a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Ethan and I thought it best to handle this quietly before the family dinner. I froze. You and Ethan? Yes, we've been discussing it for months. His tone dripped with condescension. It makes financial sense. My pulse pounded in my ears. And when were you planning to tell me? After the ink dried. Richard sighed, the same weary sound he'd used for years to shut me down. Maggie, don't make this difficult. Sign today or next week. The result is the same. See? I crossed my arms. How much? He named a figure. It was higher than I expected, enough to live comfortably the rest of my life. But then he added, of course, most of that belongs to me. I funded the investment from premarital assets. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Premarital assets, Richard. We bought that house 10 years into our marriage, with my inheritance as the down payment. Every mortgage payment came from our joint account, an account I funded by teaching, by running your household, by raising our children while you built your empire. Don't you dare erase me from that history. His jaw tightened. Don't be dramatic. This is business. No, I said evenly. This is betrayal. The doorbell rang again before he could reply. Through the frosted glass, I saw Ethan, Natalie, Lucas, and unexpectedly my daughter Claire. She lived in Seattle and hadn't mentioned visiting. A prickle of unease traveled down my spine. They hadn't come for Christmas. They'd come for something else. I plastered on a smile as I opened the door. Merry Christmas, I said, though my voice sounded foreign. As hugs were exchanged, my eyes caught the silent glance between Richard and Ethan, a glance that told me more than words ever could. They thought tonight would be the night they cornered me. They thought I was still the same woman who had once signed anything just to keep the peace. They were wrong. The house filled quickly with the sounds of coats being shed, footsteps on the wooden floor, and polite holiday greetings that felt more like rehearsed lines than genuine warmth. I guided everyone toward the living room, the tree sparkling in the corner, its ornaments reflecting fragments of our fractured family. Natalie placed her casserole on the sideboard. Lucas dropped onto the sofa, scrolling his phone, and Claire hovered near the doorway, her eyes darting between me and Richard. Seeing her there twisted something inside me. Claire had left Charleston years ago, chasing opportunity in Seattle. Phone calls had dwindled to obligatory check-ins on birthdays and Christmas. Her sudden appearance without warning felt less like a surprise and more like a setup. Mom, Claire said softly, stepping forward to hug me. She smelled faintly of airport coffee and perfume. It's been too long. Yes, I answered, holding her tighter than she held me. It has. Behind us, Ethan's voice carried Dad's already talked to Mom about the papers. It'll all be handled before dinner. Handled, as if I were some business transaction to be finalized before carving the ham. My stomach turned. In the kitchen, I busied myself with basting the turkey, needing the familiar rhythm of cooking to steady my nerves. The clatter of pans was a shield against the whispers I could hear in the next room. Richard's low baritone, Ethan's eager responses, Natalie's careful laughter. Claire said little, though every now and then her voice lifted with cautious questions. Need help? Mom. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his smile stiff. No, I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel, though you could have warned me about the beach house. He shifted uncomfortably. Dad thought it'd be better to wait until everything was certain. No need to upset you prematurely. Upset me, Ethan. It's my property too. He sighed, lowering his voice. Look, Mom, we've all been under pressure. Lucas's tuition, Claire's project out west, Dad's health. This money could help everyone. Isn't that what you've always wanted, for us to be taken care of? There it was, the assumption that my role in this family was to sacrifice quietly until nothing remained. I stared at him, my firstborn, the boy whose fevers I nursed through endless nights, who once clung to my hand on the first day of school. And here he was, justifying betrayal with the language of duty. "What about me?" I asked softly. He blinked. "You have the house, your pension. What more do you need?" The question was like a blade, at my age, as though 60 years of life meant I should accept scraps, surrender my worth, and fade quietly into the background. I turned back to the oven. "Tell everyone dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. When he left, I allowed my hands to tremble against the counter. Rage and sorrow battled inside me, but beneath them both was something colder clarity. I was done playing the role of the agreeable mother. If tonight was an ambush, they'd discover just how prepared I was. The dining room glowed with candlelight when I carried in the turkey. Everything looked perfect: the polished silver, the neatly folded napkins, the antique china I'd inherited from my mother. For a fleeting moment, I almost convinced myself it was just another holiday, but the tension around the table was unmistakable, thick as smoke. Richard raised his glass. "To family, to new beginnings," his eyes locked with mine, daring me to contradict him. "To family," the others echoed. Glasses clinked, smiles stretched thin. As I began carving, Ethan cleared his throat. "We have some news. Dad's new venture has offered me a position overseas. Zurich. It's an incredible opportunity." Natalie beamed. "The signing bonus alone will set us up for years." I paused, knife in hand. "And what about Lucas's education?" "Gap year," Lucas muttered without looking up. "Dad's lining up an internship for me." Richard smiled proudly, the patriarch orchestrating his legacy. "This opportunity ensures the family's future. Of course, the proceeds from the Folly Beach property will help secure it." My hand stilled on the turkey. "Proceeds?" "Yes," Ethan said quickly. "Once you sign, Dad's half will go toward the relocation. And yours can help Claire with her business venture. She's been trying to secure funding for months." Claire flinched, then straightened. "It's a tech startup. Mom, huge potential." I set down the knife, folding my napkin with deliberate care. "So you've already decided how to spend my share?" "It's not like that," Ethan protested. "We just thought." "You thought I wouldn't need it." I finished for him. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of the candles. Richard leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. "Maggie, don't be short-sighted. This isn't about you. It's about family." "No," I said, my voice steady. "It's about control. And you're all about to learn that I am not nearly as powerless as you think." Across the table, Claire's eyes flickered with something I couldn't read: guilt, fear, or perhaps recognition. But Ethan's jaw hardened, his loyalty to his father outweighing any memory of who raised him. Dinner had only just begun, and already the storm was gathering. The clinking of silverware against china should have been comforting, but each sound felt like a countdown. I watched them all: Richard at the head of the table, Ethan to his right, Natalie glowing with anticipation, Lucas restless and distracted, Claire shifting uneasily in her seat. My family looked like strangers dressed in holiday clothes. Richard leaned back, swirling wine in his glass. "Maggie, you've always had a sentimental streak. The Folly Beach house is just wood and plaster. The value lies in what it can do for the next generation. You should take pride in helping launch them forward." I set down my fork. "Funny, Richard. I thought pride came from honesty, but you and Ethan decided to keep me in the dark for months. What exactly am I supposed to be proud of?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Mom, don't twist this. Dad wanted to spare you unnecessary stress. We knew you'd overreact." "Overreact," I said slowly. "You're talking about selling the one place in this world where I ever felt free. The place I taught you to swim, Ethan. The place Daniel caught his first fish. That house is not just wood and plaster. It's memories, it's history, and you've already carved it up like it's a pie cooling on the windowsill. Natalie's smile faltered. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Only Richard held my gaze, his expression cold and practiced. Maggie, he said softly, like a man soothing a child, stop making this about sentiment. Business is business. Sign the papers, and we all move forward. Refuse, and you'll only make things messy. Claire cleared her throat. Maybe we should. Richard cut her off with a sharp look. Don't start. Claire, you of all people know how much you need this. Her cheeks flushed. She pressed her lips together and fell silent, but her eyes flickered toward me, an apology buried under fear. I leaned forward, folding my hands. So let me be clear. You've decided I don't need my share, that it should fund Ethan's move, Natalie's comfort, Lucas's internship, and Claire's startup. And I should be grateful for the privilege of signing away what little independence I have left. It's not like that, Ethan said quickly. His voice rose, brittle and defensive. You've always had the house. You've always had enough. Why can't you just support us, for once? I laughed, a bitter sound that startled even me. For once, Ethan, I sacrificed my career to raise you. I sat through every parent-teacher conference, every recital, every fevered night while your father was off signing deals. Don't you dare tell me I haven't supported you. I gave everything, and now you want more. The air in the room thickened. Even the candles seemed to burn lower. Richard leaned forward, voice low, dangerous. Don't be dramatic. This isn't theft, it's planning, asset management. No, Richard, I whispered. This is theft dressed up in legal paper, and I won't play along. For a moment, silence stretched like a drawn bow. Then Ethan shoved his chair back, standing with his fists clenched, his voice cracked with fury. Why do you always have to fight us? Why can't you just let us handle things? You think you're the only one who's ever sacrificed. You think you're the only one who hurts. I rose too, napkin falling from my lap to the floor. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. I think I am the only one who remembers what loyalty looks like. Because right now, none of you seem to. Natalie gasped softly. Lucas stared at me, wide-eyed, as if seeing me for the first time, not as a grandmother, but as a woman unwilling to bow. Claire's hands trembled in her lap. Richard stood then, moving behind Ethan, a general urging his soldier forward. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Sometimes, he said quietly, you need to show strength to break hysteria. The words chilled me to my core. I had heard them before, phrases he used in private arguments, always paired with his simmering contempt. And in Ethan's eyes, I saw something shift, a storm brewing, a shadow falling. My boy, my firstborn, suddenly looked less like the child I raised and more like the man who had broken me for decades. The room seemed to shrink. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could feel the moment tipping, a cliff edge I had been forced to before. I straightened my spine, preparing. Whatever came next, I would not cower, not this time. Dinner was about to become war. The tension was unbearable. The table, once a place of holiday laughter, had become a battlefield. My eyes locked on Ethan's, and I saw the storm gathering in his chest, a storm Richard had been stoking all evening. Richard's hand remained heavy on his son's shoulder, silent encouragement wrapped in poisonous authority. Sit down, Ethan, I said quietly. This isn't strength, it's weakness dressed up in anger. But my words only fueled him. His jaw tightened, his breath quickened, and in a sudden motion, he stepped forward. Before I could react, his hand cut through the air, sharp and merciless, connecting with my cheek in a crack that echoed through the room like thunder. The force knocked me sideways into the serving cart. China shattered on the floor. My lips split against my teeth. For a heartbeat, I saw stars, tasted iron, and then silence. Natalie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Lucas half rose from his chair, frozen with shock. Claire's face drained of color, her hands trembling in her lap, and Richard didn't move. He stood there, watching, his expression unreadable. But I did not cry. I did not beg. I straightened, every nerve in my body aflame, and I smiled. The room recoiled at that smile. Ethan's hand still hovered midair, his rage collapsing into confusion. Richard's brow furrowed, the first flicker of doubt crossing his face. Even Claire looked at me differently, as though she'd never seen her mother before this moment. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice calm and steady, despite the blood on my lip. Ethan blinked, stumbling back a step. "Mom, you just gave me exactly what I needed." I cut in. Proof that I no longer owe this family blind loyalty. Proof that the boy I raised is gone, replaced by a man willing to strike his own mother because his father told him to. Richard moved forward then, his voice low and hard. "Ethan was right to put you in your place. This behavior is unacceptable." I laughed, a sharp sound that filled the room. "My place. Is it here on the floor, Richard, surrounded by broken china? Is that the place you carved out for me after 40 years of marriage?" "Stop being so dramatic," he snapped, though there was a weariness in his eyes now, a falter in his voice. "Dramatic." I touched my swollen cheek lightly. "No, Richard. For the first time in my life, I'm clear." I crossed the room slowly, every step deliberate, and pulled open the drawer of the antique secretary desk. From inside, I withdrew a leather folder I had placed there that morning. I set it on the table between us, sliding the first document across the polished wood. "What's this?" Richard demanded. "Insurance," I replied. "The deed to Folly Beach, solely in my name, transferred 3 years ago with your signature. Richard, you signed so many documents back then. I doubt you noticed which ones mattered most." His face darkened as he snatched the paper, eyes scanning furiously. "This is a forgery. The property is joint." "It was," I said evenly, "until it wasn't. The transfer was legitimate, witnessed, filed, perfectly legal." Richard's hand shook. "You tricked me." "I learned from the best," I said coldly. "You taught me well." I opened the folder again and laid out another set of papers. Bank transfers, shell companies, evidence compiled quietly over years. "I also know about your offshore accounts, the money you hid before the divorce, the stock manipulation. I've kept it all, neatly documented, thoroughly verified." Claire gasped, covering her mouth. Lucas's wide eyes darted between us, realization dawning that his grandfather's power was built on lies. "This is blackmail," Richard spat. "No," I corrected. "This is consequence, something you've avoided your entire life." I turned to Ethan, whose face had gone ashen. "And do you see now what your father has made of you? Do you understand what it means to raise your hand against your mother? You didn't just strike me, you struck the last illusion I held about this family, and you lost." Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in years, he looked like a boy again, frightened, lost, ashamed. I gathered the papers back into the folder, my hands steady despite the pounding in my chest. "You all came here tonight thinking you could ambush me, but you underestimated me. You thought I was still the woman who stayed quiet, who signed anything put in front of her just to keep the peace. You were wrong." Tfikine. I placed the folder under my arm, lifted my chin, and looked each of them in the eye. "Dinner is over. See yourselves out." And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving them in stunned silence, the flickering candlelight dancing over the wreckage of a Christmas Eve none of us would ever forget. I didn't go upstairs to cry. I didn't lock myself in my room to lick my wounds. Instead, I walked calmly into the hallway, retrieved my coat from the rack, and slipped out the front door. The December air bit at my swollen cheek, but it felt cleaner than the suffocating air I had left behind. Inside, I heard muffled voices, Richard snapping commands, Ethan trying to apologize, Claire whispering frantically, "I didn't care. Let them stew in the ruins of their perfect little ambush." I drove through the quiet streets of Charleston, past houses glowing with Christmas lights, past families who still believed in joy and togetherness. My hands trembled only once on the steering wheel before I tightened my grip. I had learned long ago that when Richard struck physically, emotionally, financially, the only way to survive was to strike back harder. By the time I pulled up to the converted Victorian that housed the law offices of Harriet Miller, my old college roommate, and now one of the most ruthless attorneys in the state, I felt a steadiness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I had chosen her during the divorce for a reason. Richard had despised her then. He would despise her even more now. The building was dark, except for one upstairs window. I knocked anyway, and moments later, Harriet herself opened the door, her sharp eyes widening at the sight of me. "My God, Maggie," she breathed, ushering me inside. "What happened to your face?" "Family dinner," I said dryly. "I think it's time we move forward with what we discussed last month." She nodded grimly, leading me into her office, where a folder already sat on the polished desk. "I prepared the trust documents as we planned. I had a feeling you'd come sooner rather than later." I sank into the leather chair, suddenly exhausted but unwilling to show weakness. Richard thinks he still owns the Folly Beach house. He thinks I'll sign it away quietly. But I have the deed, and I want it locked so tightly in a trust that not even his army of lawyers can touch it. Harriet slid the folder toward me. "The Clark Family Trust, though perhaps we should give it a new name. This trust will hold the beach property, your retirement accounts, and your current home. Once executed, it's irreversible. Richard and even your children will have no legal claim." I flipped through the pages, scanning the clean, precise language and the other matters at her. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "The whistleblower packet to the SEC is ready. All those offshore transfers, the hidden assets, the insider trades documented and waiting. I've been sitting on it for months." My fingers brushed the edge of the paper, my cheek throbbing with each heartbeat. "Not yet," I said. "Let him sweat first. Let him think I'm still the woman he can manipulate. Then we pull the trigger." Harriet's eyes softened for just a moment. "You've waited a long time for this, Maggie." "Yes," I said, signing the first line with a firm hand. "Too long." She prepared a video deposition next, setting up a small camera in the corner of the office. "With your injuries, your testimony will be even more powerful if Richard tries to claim coercion or mental instability. Tell the truth, all of it." So I did. For the next hour, I laid bare everything 40 years of Richard's control, the financial games, the threats, the silence I had endured. The camera caught my split lip, the bruise already darkening on my cheek, the steadiness in my eyes that no amount of abuse could break anymore. When the recording ended, I felt hollowed out, but strangely light. Harriet switched off the camera, her jaw tight with restrained fury. "This will hold in court, and Maggie, if he tries to move against you, I will bury him." I smiled faintly. "That's why I came to you." As I left her office that night, clutching the thick folder of executed documents, I felt the tide turning. Richard and Ethan had expected me to break. Instead, I had fortified myself. The trust was secure, the evidence cataloged, and the first domino had already been tipped. Outside, Charleston streets were silent under the glow of Christmas lights. I pulled my coat tighter and breathed in the cold air. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of Richard Hayes. And for the first time ever, I was ready to show him and my children who I truly was. The next morning, I woke in the small room I'd rented under my maiden name at a modest inn near the Battery. The air smelled of salt and pine from a wreath hanging in the hallway, but beneath it all, I could still taste blood in my mouth. My cheek throbbed when I touched it, a sharp reminder of Ethan's hand. I checked my phone. 17 missed calls from him, 8 from Claire, 3 from Natalie, not a single one from Richard. He never called directly, he always sent others to do his dirty work. I ignored the calls and scrolled to the text from Harriet. Trust is filed, deed secure, video testimony archived. Relief settled over me like a warm blanket. No matter what Richard tried next, the Folly Beach property was beyond his reach. But Richard was nothing if not predictable. By mid-morning, Harriet called. "Brace yourself," she said. "I just received word through the grapevine. Richard has already contacted Dr. Avery Harper." The name was familiar. A psychiatrist Richard had once used in a corporate lawsuit, paid to declare an employee unstable when she threatened to sue. A man whose signature could turn independence into confinement with a single form. "He's going to try to have me committed," I said flatly. "Yes," Harriet confirmed. "Emergency evaluation, acute stress disorder, paranoia, something along those lines. He'll say last night proves it. We need evidence before he moves. Stay out of sight until I arrange protections." As if on cue, my phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Mrs. Hayes' attentive female voice said, "It's Sophie, Lucas's girlfriend." My pulse quickened. She had seated quietly at the table last night, eyes wide, shrinking as tensions rose. "Yes, Sophie. What is it?" She faltered. "I shouldn't even be calling. But after dinner, they sent me out for food. I came back early and overheard Mr. Hayes talking to Ethan. They were planning something. Papers, doctors, people who could come to your house and take you away. It scared me." Her voice trembled, but beneath it was a steel I recognized. I had once been a young woman like her, watching power plays I didn't understand, but knowing instinctively they were wrong. "What exactly did you hear?" I asked carefully. "I recorded some of it," she whispered. "I study pre-law at College of Charleston. I knew one-party consent applied here, so I hit record." My heart pounded. "You recorded Richard?" "Yes, him and Ethan. They mentioned Dr. Harper by name. They said you'd be better off under supervision until the property deal was finalized." She hesitated. "Mrs. Hayes, I don't want to cause trouble, but what I saw last night, what Ethan did, it isn't right. Lucas is too afraid to go against his dad, but someone has to help you." For a moment, silence filled the line. My throat tightened, not from fear but from the strange, bittersweet relief of realizing anyone saw me clearly. "Send it to me," I said softly. Minutes later, the file arrived. I played it twice, my hands trembling as Richard's smooth voice filled the room. "We'll have her evaluated. Ethan, if she resists, sedation can be arranged. Harper owes me favors. By the time the trust is challenged, she'll be discredited." There it was, proof not just of his scheme, but of his contempt. Harriet would devour this. I called her immediately. She listened in silence, then said, "This is gold. With that audio and your injuries, we can obtain a restraining order today. Stay put. I'll handle the paperwork." When I hung up, I stared out the window at the harbor, where seagulls wheeled above the waves. For years, Richard had painted me as fragile, dependent, hysterical. He had convinced even my children that my resistance was irrational. But now I held his own words, his own arrogance, captured on tape by a 19-year-old girl who refused to stay silent. I texted Sophie, "You did the right thing, no matter what happens. Remember that." Her reply came quickly, "I just want the truth out. Lucas deserves to see it too." I closed my phone, a flicker of something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. Hope. Richard thought he could bury me under lies, but this time, I had allies. This time, he would learn that the woman he once dismissed as sentimental and weak was capable of far more than he ever imagined. And I intended to prove it. By dawn the next morning, Charleston glowed under a thin veil of frost. I sat by the window of the inn, a cup of bitter coffee warming my hands. When Harriet called, her tone was brisk, businesslike, but beneath it, I heard the satisfaction of a seasoned lawyer holding a winning card. "It's done," She said, "The restraining order is signed. Officers will serve Richard, Ethan, and Dr. Harper this morning. And with Sophie's recording, they'll have no wiggle room to spin the story in their favor." A wave of relief washed over me, followed by a sharper thought Richard was about to feel, for the first time, what it meant to lose control. At exactly 9:15, my phone buzzed again. Harriet's voice was cool. "They've been served." Richard was furious, threatening every lawsuit under the sun. Ethan looked like he'd seen a ghost, and Harper, he slithered out the back like a rat. I closed my eyes, picturing the scene: the patriarch and his protege confronted by police instead of a compliant woman, and the trust I asked. Filed and untouchable. Harriet confirmed. "Your assets are locked down. They can't touch them." For the first time in decades, I felt untethered from Richard's grip, but Harriet wasn't finished. "One more thing. The SEC submission, we can hold it, but the board of his company will likely move without us. If they suspect fraud, they won't protect him. You may not need to send a thing." As if summoned, my phone buzzed with an incoming call: John Hartwell, chairman of Richard's firm. I hesitated only a moment before answering. "Mrs. Hayes," his voice was tight, strained. "We've received troubling documentation regarding Richard's finances. Are these allegations true?" "They're not allegations," I said calmly. "They're facts, transfers, shell companies, insider trades, verified by a forensic accountant." A long pause followed. "If this is made public, it will devastate the company." "Then I suggest," I replied evenly, "that Richard resign today, quietly. Call it a personal matter, call it health issues, I don't care. But if he doesn't, the SEC gets every file I hold." Another silence. Then Hartwell exhaled heavily. "Understood. We'll convene the board immediately." When I hung up, my hands were steady, my voice strong. Richard's empire, built on intimidation and deceit, was crumbling piece by piece. Hours later, my phone pinged with a new email. Attached was Richard's resignation letter, polished corporate doublespeak about personal reasons and the need to prioritize family. I almost laughed at the irony. Prioritize family, the same man who had turned his son against me, who had orchestrated a plan to steal my home and silence my voice, now cloaked his downfall in sentimentality. The news spread fast. By mid-afternoon, financial outlets buzzed with the story. Prominent developer steps down amid misconduct questions. Photos of Richard, once smiling beside glass towers he claimed as trophies, now captioned with whispers of fraud. His name was poison, his legacy unraveling. I sat in the quiet of the inn, staring at the screen, waiting for the flood of calls I knew would come. They did. Ethan first, his voice frantic on voicemail. "Mom, please, I didn't mean it. I don't know what came over me. Please talk to me." Then Claire, her tone sharp and desperate. "Mom, this is insane. Whatever Dad did to you, that's between you two. Don't drag us into it. Don't ruin everything." And finally Natalie, measured but pleading. "Think of Lucas. He doesn't deserve this. Don't punish the family for Richard's mistakes." I deleted every message without responding, not because I didn't care, though a part of me didn't, but because I knew their words weren't for me. They were echoes of Richard's manipulation, echoes of his voice. That night, I returned to the Folly Beach house. Snow had begun to fall along the coast, rare for Charleston, blanketing the porch in white. I unlocked the door with the key I had kept separate all these years and stepped into the warmth of my own space. The air smelled faintly of salt and wood, the house humming with quiet resilience. I lit a fire in the hearth and sat in the old chair where I had once read to my children. My cheek still ached, my lips still stung, but inside me, something new had settled: peace. Not because justice was finished, but because I had finally chosen myself over them. Richard's empire was collapsing. Ethan's illusions were shattered. Claire's silence would haunt her. And Lucas, perhaps he would see the truth now. Maybe Sophie would help him find it. As the flames crackled, I realized this was not just revenge, it was reclamation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Richard's wife, or Ethan's mother, or Claire's afterthought. I was Margaret Hayes, and I was free. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of the Folly Beach house, the summer sun reflecting off the waves like shards of glass. The world felt different, now lighter, though not softer. Richard's resignation had ignited a cascade of lawsuits and investigations. His name, once spoken with reverence in Charleston boardrooms, was now synonymous with corruption. Ethan had distanced himself, drowning in guilt and excuses, though not once had he faced me directly. Claire oscillated between fury and pleading, unable to decide whether to stand with her father or face the truth. Only Lucas had reached out with sincerity. He came one afternoon with Sophie, quiet and hesitant, carrying groceries like peace offerings. When he hugged me, I felt a trembling in his arms that told me he had seen the cost of loyalty to Richard and Ethan, and he didn't want to inherit it. I let him in, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel entirely alone. I had sold the Charleston house, donating most of its contents to charity. The Folly Beach house was mine now, not just on paper, but in spirit. Its walls, once shadowed by Richard's ambition, now held only my laughter, my quiet, my chosen company. I gardened, I wrote, I read late into the night. Freedom wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it was mine. People sometimes ask if I regret it, if I regret exposing my own family, dragging decades of secrets into the light, and my answer is always the same: no. Some things cannot be forgiven. Some betrayals are too deep, too deliberate, too corrosive to overlook. Richard taught Ethan how to wield power through fear, but he underestimated the strength of a woman who finally refused to be afraid. I think often of Daniel, the son I lost. I imagine him sitting beside me on the dock, grinning, as he reeled in that first fish, telling me I was stronger than I believed. I didn't stand my ground for Richard, or for Ethan, or even for Claire. I did it for myself, and maybe, in some way, I did it for him too, for the child who once told me I deserved better. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a broken woman defined by what was taken from her. I see Margaret Hayes, a mother, a survivor, a woman who chose truth over silence, a woman who finally smiled at the right moment and changed everything. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this: no matter how long it takes, no matter how much you've lost, it is never too late to claim your own life back. Before you go, if my story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what moment in your life made you finally stand your ground. Your story might just be the one that gives someone else the courage to rise. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming the person they never believed you could be.